Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Quality Matters. Kyle's trying to jump the gun and steal my show. I'm Darcy.
I'm Kyle.
And we are pleased to be back with Purdeep Sangha that we talked to. No, he's mad. Okay, pause it. What did you not like? Okay, I guess we're going to keep going. Kyle was... Okay, I think we're just going to keep going. I don't know. Kyle didn't like something I said, but it's okay. All right. This time we're going to talk about processes for teams. Oh, and I want to pause and say thanks again to the Canon Houston for having us today as we go ahead and talk about processes for teams with Purdeep. So what do you got for us?
Oh, yeah, great. So I guess we might as well just jump right in. So the processes so I'm Canadian, so I say processes. So this is going to be interesting.
Okay.
I always get made fun of by my US clients and friends out there. So processes are so important. And I learned the importance of processes through, obviously, we talked about me being in the corporate world. I was in charge of operations. I was also in charge of marketing and sales. But one of the biggest things that we took a look at was really how do you make more money in business, and how do you become more effective? And the most important thing I could say is the difference between an average performing business and a very high performing business is processes. Because the more streamlined you are, the better you can make the processes, and the better and more effective you actually are at making profit. And so that also includes, it's interesting because we don't think of having as many processes for our HR teams or our employees, but they are so important. And it's interesting because I have studied with or trained at Toyota, Nissan, and Toyota, Nissan, and Honda in Japan, and been on site in their locations to see just how effective they are when it comes to their processes. And it is absolutely amazing. And the most important thing that they do is they focus on the processes for their teams as well, not just their operational component when it comes to putting together cars, but how they work together as a team. Yep. Because the most important thing is if you take a look at what a team is meant to do, there is two ultimate objectives of a team. The first one is to get the job done. And the second one, which most teams miss out on, is learning to get better at getting the job done.
Yep.
And those are two distinct differences, because most teams will get the job done, but a lot of them don't get better at it. And so in order to get better at it, you have to have the processes in place, because you have to be able to measure. You have to be able to hold people accountable. And that all comes down to having the right processes, because processes are objective and people are subjective. So when something doesn't go right, it's easy to blame a person and say, well, it's because of that person. It's because of the work ethic, or they showed up late, or they're just not happy. They're not engaged. Right?
Yep. Yes.
But if you don't have a process behind it, you just can't pinpoint it, because it's a lot easier to focus on the processes. And if everybody's focusing on the process, then you'll actually find out where the challenge is. Is it actually in the person, or is it in the process? Otherwise, you're just guessing.
Yep.
So I want to ask you, when you worked with those companies, Honda, Nissan, and Toyota, can you give us an example of a process they had for their team that they used?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the one that really sticks out the most for me is they have a daily process called their daily Hansai, which is, it means reflection. And what they do is they sit down either first thing in the morning, or they sit down in the afternoon with their team, whether it's a smaller team or the larger team, and they will say, okay, let's reflect now. What happened today that we did well, and what happened today that we didn't do well, and what can we do to improve it tomorrow? And so that simple exercise, that I implement this in every single team that I work with, And it just does magic because people are more open. It's a constructive team meeting, but people are on the same page because if you face a challenge today, you know how to deal with it tomorrow if you're actually having the conversation.
Now, I know immediately folks are going to start to object to, well, we don't have that kind of time, or it's too hard to get everyone together. Not saying I agree, but how do you respond to those objections?
Well, it's either that or do you have time to correct people's mistakes or errors, right? We don't realize that every time there's an error made or something that goes down the chain, it actually costs you 10 times more, whether it's time, energy, or resources to actually correct it. So that is just belief. It's just internal belief. If you put things down and actually, and here's a thing that actually changed my life, is really demand creates productivity. And so if you put the right type of demand on, you will actually get the productivity. So having an extra 10 minutes at the end of the day is absolutely doable. And I can show because it's easy for people to say that. But if I were to sit down with people or managers were to sit down with their people and say, okay, let's look at what you do day in and day out. There's always 10 minutes that people can spare for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, when it came to the teams that sat down at the end of the day, is this all teams across the company, or is it a certain level of team members that sat down?
No, everybody within their own team unit, whatever that is, whether you're within the marketing team unit, the sales team unit, you're all sitting. Every single team is expected to sit down and actually have that conversation.
That's awesome because we did an episode. I keep going back to this because I'm a teacher by trade. I've probably said it 100 times on our podcast. And we did an episode where a major school district went and achieved ISO certification. And that's what they talked about, is once the employees' voices felt like they were being heard and it was safe to talk about how you felt, then morale started to improve.
Yes, it's incredible to see what happens because first people, and it's natural, it's the change process. People object, they're wary. The first question is, what does this mean for me? Do I have to say something, or is someone going to pinpoint my mistake? And when they realize that it's a constructive meeting, because the most important thing that you can do for your team is create a culture where there is what I call zero blame and 100% accountability. If you can do that, and do that successfully, people will openly come out with their mistakes and say, hey, look, I screwed up on this. I would love to get some help in terms of how I can do it better next time. It's tough, but you can get there.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that's wonderful because, like Kyle said, I think if you try to say to a company, hey, you're going to call a meeting every day, everybody's going to stop for 10 minutes. Not only are the managers going to say, we don't have time for that, but then the employees are going to say, oh, another meeting. What's the point of this? Because so many, I feel like, I could be wrong, companies and employees feel like it doesn't matter what they say. It's just a manager checking a box and saying, well, the process says we have to do this, so we're going to meet, but nothing's really going to come of it.
But I think the key to the success, from my understanding, at least if I were to implement this, as we just said, is that it's all about, accountability. I just finished reading Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership. And, it's all about taking that ownership for what you do. And if you can successfully do that, well, you don't have to worry about someone else coming after you. And, I even talk to folks about that when we do ISO audits and consultations, is I'll tell them, like, look, if you know you've got this glaring hole in your system that you haven't been able to fix yet, document the mess out of it. And when your auditor shows up, the worst you can do is say, hey, you've got a problem that you're fixing.
Yes, absolutely. That's brilliant.
And I'd like to take one step back because, we talk about quality management in here. And you mentioned that there's, kind of two objectives of a team is, one's to get the work done and the other is to improve. Not perfectly quoting you, obviously, but continual improvement is, the last section of the standard. And so many people just breeze right past that continual improvement piece. And man, I get some of the weirdest examples of what people consider continual improvement in their organization to be. And no one really understands how to show that they're getting better. But it seems like you've got a good system here. So I'd like to hear more about that piece of it.
Yeah, continuous improvement is basically, it's the foundation. We talk about, as I mentioned, my background's in innovation leadership. And everybody thinks that innovation is this crazy stuff. Like you come up with this new stuff that no one's ever heard about. But part of innovation is also continuous improvement. That's what innovation is just doing something better, finding a better way to do it. And so employees, the first thing is creating that culture of continuous improvement. This is where the Japanese outwork the North Americans day in and day out, is they have a culture of continuous improvement, not only in their business, but in their life.
Yeah.
That's what everything is about. How do we just do things better? And so having that culture is important. That's the first thing, is creating that culture of trust, openness, because every employee deep down inside wants to do their job the best way they can. They might not be motivated. They might not have the right tools. They might not have the right skills. They might not have the right management. But every person inside truly wants to feel like they're adding value. It's a human. It's an innate part of us as humans. So all we need to do is figure out how to unlock that within each team and each individual. Because once you do that, that's when you can actually get into continuous improvement. The mistakes that most organizations make is they talk about continuous improvement without creating the culture for it.
Yes.
That's where things go sideways.
Yes. And then, you'll get these, I get these really, sometimes very goofy continuous improvement lists. And they're literally just typed up, even on Notepad, and printed out 10 minutes before the audit. And
Just click on it.
that's just not, that's not what we're looking for. What I tell folks to use as kind of examples of stuff is everyone has problems. We all have defects in our work. Just simply analyzing those defects at the end of the month to see, well, was there a pattern here? Was there a common day of the week that this stuff happened on? Because sometimes these weird little mundane things that you don't think about, it really start to matter. But I feel like people see the data collection piece as almost as like another meeting. It's just one more thing that we have to do. They don't see the value in it. So I'm kind of curious how you help get people over those obstacles. Because seeing your, the Six Sigma background and whatnot, I know you're involved in data collection.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to that, the most important thing to realize is before you put something else, this is a common objection that people give. Oh, you're going to give me something else, something else I got to do on top of what I got to do.
Yeah.
So the first thing as managers, as leaders, we have to realize is if we're going to give someone something else to do, we have to take something away from them or show them that it's going to make their job easier, so it takes something away from them. So you have to subtract before you add. So whatever you're doing, and so one of the techniques I use is I ask managers to go in and make their employees' life a little bit easier first, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Maybe it's, maybe it's giving them an extra break, or maybe it's doing something else, or taking a task away from them in some way, shape, or form, so that they feel like you're giving to them first before you actually give them another task. So that is important, and they have to understand. I think the most missed out thing across the board is most employees do not understand their value in terms of the overall process, the value chain, and what they're contributing. And so if you can show that increasing or improving the way they're doing something today adds overall value to the organization, people want to add value. People want to be valued. As I mentioned before, it's a human innate. You cannot take that out of that. That's part of our social status, is we want to feel like we're valued in a group. So the way we go about it is the difficulty. And so people have to understand motivational tactics too, because everybody is motivated differently. And this comes down to personality assessments as well. And a lot of people don't understand their staff from a personality assessment. Two people will do a task, will complete a task, but for two totally different motivations. One person will do it because they might be a task-oriented person, because if you put a task on their desk, they have to do it. Otherwise, they feel like they're totally incomplete, like something's missing in their life.
That's me.
Right?
I'm that person.
Right? Yeah. And other people may do it because they just don't want to let you down.
Oh, that's me too, though.
And that's a different Yeah, and that's a different motivation as well. So everybody has a different motivation. Other people, you can give them a task and they'll say, let me just figure out how I can be creative with this task because it's an internal challenge for them. They love challenges. And so find out what motivates your employees, because what we do is we just throw everybody together in the same bucket and expect them to get the work done. It doesn't work that way.
Well, and it's so funny. I keep connecting to the teaching. We did that episode so long ago, but I just wrote up a blog on it yesterday. But it's the same thing with teaching. You put all these kids in a classroom, and it used to be we're all going to teach them the same way, and now it's changing to where we've got to meet each learner where they are. And it's the same thing in a workplace. Mm-hmm. All your employees are not the same, so we need to meet each of them where they are.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Absolutely. And I love that you're a teacher, because teachers are awesome.
Well, thank you. I haven't been for about 6 years, but that's my background.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
You have any more questions for him, Kyle?
No. I think that's good. I definitely want to do this again. Lots of valuable information here. I know you talk about entrepreneurs, but I'm just seeing so many of the just the middle management at these organizations that I talk to, that this is all incredibly valuable information.
Yeah, and it's great. And I guess my last piece is, you talked about middle management. Most of the time, they're the ones that feel the most left out, because they have the biggest pressures put on them. They're the ones that are getting the work done, but they don't have the insight. They don't have the communication. They're not in tune with the strategy, what everybody at corporate office is doing. So they literally are the meat in the sandwich. And so they require sometimes the most attention.
I totally agree. And, I'll have to stop myself. we will definitely have to do this again.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you again. I definitely appreciate this.